Before I say anything about hope, I want to acknowledge something real. For some of us, messages about hope, they don't land as encouragement. They land as irritation or suspicion or exhaustion. We've heard hopeful words used to minimize pain, to rush grief, or to bypass hard realities. And so when someone starts talking about hope, the walls go up. And that's not unnatural. That reaction makes sense. So this is not an attempt to talk anyone out of their pain or to paint over real suffering with religious language. This is not optimism. This is not denial. This is an invitation to consider one question, quietly, honestly, without pressure to agree. What if hope isn't something we manufacture, but something that stands on its own, even when we don't feel it? With that in mind, let me say this. There are moments in life when hope feels irresponsible, when the diagnosis is real, when the marriage is hanging by a thread, or when the addiction has your name memorized, when the country feels like it's coming apart at the seams, when grief sits down beside you and refuses to leave. In moments like those, optimism can feel naive, faith can feel fragile, and resurrection can sound like a nice story for springtime, but not something sturdy enough to stand on when the weight gets heavy. And yet, Christian faith does not begin with good advice. It begins with bad news and an empty grave. Early on the first day of the week, the women came to the tomb carrying spices, because dead things stay dead. That's how the world works. They were not expecting a miracle. They were expecting to manage loss. But the stone was rolled away. The body, gone. And the angel asked a question that still echoes through history. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Luke 24:5. That question isn't poetic. It's confrontational. Because if the tomb is empty, then Jesus is not just a teacher to admire or a moral example to imitate. He is Lord. He is alive. And he is not bound by the limits we have learned to accept. The resurrection is not God putting a bow on tragedy. It is God detonating death from the inside. The cross tells just how far God is willing to go to reach us. The empty tomb tells us nothing can stop him. Not Rome, not religious hypocrisy, not betrayal, not violence, not shame, not even the grave. And here's where it gets uncomfortably personal. There is a moment most of us reach, not when we stop believing in God, but when we stop praying about that thing. Not because we think God is powerless, but because we quietly decide this situation will never change. We adjust. We cope. We lower expectations. We carry spices to a tomb we've already sealed in our minds. But if the tomb is empty, then resignation is no longer faith. It's surrender to despair. Paul puts it bluntly. If Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile. 1 Corinthians 15:17. In other words, if the tomb is not empty, then none of this matters. We are just trying to be nicer people in a broken world while hoping for the best. But if the tomb is empty, then forgiveness is possible. Then freedom is possible. Then healing is possible. Then restoration is possible. Then change is possible. Not easy, not instant, but possible. And resurrection doesn't just comfort us, it confronts us. If Jesus is alive, then obedience is no longer unreasonable. Delayed obedience is no longer neutral. Hiding is no longer harmless. The resurrection removes the option of spectator Christianity. Jesus is not asking to be admired from a distance. He is asking to be followed. Resurrection does not erase scars. Jesus still carried his, but it redefined them. The wounds that once proved defeat became proof of victory. And that matters for you, because you have scars too. Scars from choices you regret. Scars from battles you didn't ask for. Scars from losses that still ache when the room goes quiet. The resurrection does not shame those scars. It redeems them. The same power that rolled the stone away is the power that met the disciples in a locked room, afraid, ashamed, and hiding. Jesus didn't scold them. He didn't demand explanations. He said, "Peace be with you." Then he breathed on them. Resurrection power does not shout first. It breathes life where hope has run out. And here's the thing we forget. The stone didn't move so Jesus could get out. He didn't need help escaping death. The stone moved so we could look in and see that death was empty. And the question now is not whether the tomb is empty. History has already answered that. The real question is whether we're still living like it isn't, still entombed by fear, still sealed in by shame, still wrapped in grave clothes Jesus already left behind. If the tomb is empty, then your past does not get the final word. If the tomb is empty, then the enemy is loud but not sovereign. If the tomb is empty, then darkness is real but temporary. And if the tomb is empty, then the call of Jesus still stands. Follow me. Not when you feel ready, not when you feel strong, not when you have answers. Follow me out of the graveyard of who you used to be. Follow me into a life that will require courage. Follow me into resurrection living right here, right now. This does not mean everything will work out the way you want. It means everything is now under the authority of the risen Christ, which means you can stand up again. You can repent again. You can forgive again. You can fight again. You can hope again. Because Christianity is not wishful thinking. It is a declaration rooted in history and sealed by an empty tomb. Death lost. The grave failed. Jesus lives. And if that's true, then anything is possible. Even you.